when Van Leeuwenhoek 200 years ago invented the optical microscope, then we saw a world that had never ever been seen before. And the same is happening now with digital technologies derived from artificial intelligence. We're seeing connections that we've not seen before.
The kind of convergence of different technologies and the ways in which they interact with each other seems to me what's key. I mean, if we look historically back to the 70s, if you like, to the last big wave of innovation, it was the convergence of digitalization and telecommunications that gave us the possibility for, among other things, the internet and the many uses of the smartphone and so on. And what we're now seeing is an integration with other technologies, ranging from 3D printers to robots to drones to automated production systems of one sort or another.
We will see huge amounts of innovation from the digital technologies that we're now developing to manage everything from smart cities and traffic flows to the energy grid. There are endless applications because the technology is, in a sense, so repurposable. Coming along with that will be serious concerns around how we ensure that people's data is managed with their consent, that the overall ways the technology is being used align with society's interests.
And the economists have argued that the disruption that digital technologies are causing and are likely increasingly to cause, that disruption is similar to disruptions that have happened in the past when new technologies have been introduced. And what tends to happen is the new technology is able to achieve the same results at lower cost. And therefore, people lose their jobs, new skills are required. But in principle, of course, because you're being more productive, then ultimately it will lead to new jobs and soak up that pool of unemployed people. And one of the things you hope is that the new employment that will replace the old employment will be one which is more amenable to people who do it, it's of higher quality, and it better suits human well-being.
The problem is that the new jobs are usually created in quite very different places, employing very different kinds of people with very different kinds of skills. And usually in the early days, there will always be a few new jobs which are creative and well paid and exciting. But the large majority of the new jobs created are likely to be low paid and insecure.
The web was thought to be an agent whereby we'd all be able to share information. It would be a marvelous location for democratic representation. But at the same time, we realize the web has a downside.
The use of social media encourages you to, so to speak, to need external validation. Instead of having a sense of who you are and what your boundaries are, and a strong sense, sort of ego boundaries, if you like, and a sense of self-esteem, if you're constantly feeling you have to measure yourself by other people's ratings, the more you're handing over to the external world the right to say how much you're worth as a person.
As we're collecting together at scale, we also have challenges around people feeling isolated, people being driven into small echo chambers or filter bubbles where they only hear one kind of opinion. And so as we come to depend on the digital networks, the digital environments in which we live, it's important that we provide a means to ensure that the whole plurality, the whole range of views and voices and perspectives are available to all of us.
Stephen Hawking, about 20 years ago, made this comment that the 21st century will, for science, be the century of complexity. And of course, having this enormous flux of digital data acquired by digital means, stored relatively inexpensively, then we can add to the capacity of computers to simulate complexity, to characterize complexity as well. And of course, if one thinks of all the big challenges to human society, infectious disease, the problem of how we attain sustainability, issues of the way in which the global financial system works, all of them are complex systems. And these new ways of dealing with complexity are quite fundamental to advancing human understanding in new and novel ways. And the big challenge, of course, is to understand what interventions are needed to ensure that we get a win-win. In other words, enhanced productivity and at the same enhanced well-being.
As we understand more and more of the risks, of course, we gradually begin to understand that all technology needs to exist within a regulatory framework, within a framework that society agrees brings the benefits and manages the harms. So very often, our science, our engineering, our technology comes back to fundamental questions of what sort of society do we want to promote and develop.